interestingly, the conversation we just had with James Mathewson, who's a former Labour Party spokesman, ties in very closely with our next topic, because he's talking about how unhappy he is with the Chancellor. We're worried about, spending cuts not being big enough, and tax rises are basically ruining our economy. His concern, like many of on the Labour benches we keep seeing, is that, can't have any cuts to benefits because all of these most people are the most vulnerable in society. But are they all? Because one of the announcements we do expect is there to be a major look at the Motability scheme. This is the scheme which basically provides vehicles to people who are disabled, who are unable to perhaps live a normal life without a vehicle. But extraordinary number of those vehicles are now on the road. Something like 1 in 6 new cars sold in this country are under this scheme. It is costing billions. And it's costing you and me. Well, let's talk about this with Chris Snowdon. He's head of lifestyle economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs, the free market think tank. Good morning to you, Chris.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. We are being asked to believe, are we not, that huge numbers of people in this country, way more than there were, say, 5-10 years ago, and certainly way more than any other Western nation, have such incapacitated ability to work and are so disabled they cannot possibly go to work and must be on personal dependence payments to not work. And by the way, most of those people don't work, and only 1 in 6 do work part-time or not. But they also must apparently be eligible for a car. Huge numbers of people are now eligible for this Motability scheme. Explain how it works and how many people are actually getting them.
Well, this is another well-meaning scheme that has turned into a racket as word gets around about what you need to say and do in order to take advantage of the benefit system. So we have over 9 million people who are of working age but economically inactive. It is one of the major problems for the economy, possibly you could argue the biggest problem facing the economy, because they're not only taking out a lot of money from the welfare system, they're not paying any tax, and they could be. And we don't know how many people legitimately could work. But when you have people going on, as they have been last week or two, talking about, the most vulnerable people, it's a kind of bleeding stump strategy, as they call it. You focus on the hard cases who genuinely do deserve support to distract attention from all the people who are ripping off the system. But most people can see, probably just knowing people down their street, that the system is being massively exploited. We've got to stop being naive about this and clamp down. I don't think we should be clamping down on the rate of benefits. I think actually benefits should be going up in line with inflation.
Yes.
We need to crack down on...
I thought that was the strangest thing. That was something that Rachel Reeves was looking at. Like, why would you cut the rate? People, these benefits barely touch the sides for a lot of people. It might be, someone get 8 or 9 grand if you're on the maximum of PIP, which sounds, is nothing compared to most people's bills. But of course, a lot of those people will also be eligible for, the housing benefit and this benefit, the council tax discount and this discount, and the car, and actually an awful lot of the outgoings a lot of people have, they don't have to pay for. But the Motability scheme, I mean, I think we can all understand if someone is, physically disabled and they cannot live anything close to a normal life without a car and they can't afford one themselves, that it would seem perfectly reasonable. But these cars routinely now to people who are claiming a mental health disability, even a learning disability like autism or ADHD, and even to people who are on, bizarrely, high incomes.
Yeah, I was pretty much unaware of this scam until a few weeks ago. And I happened, on the day I was reading about it, I happened to be down the pub and I mentioned it to somebody almost at random. And immediately he came back and said, yeah, my mate's son, who's 17, got autism. He's just picked up the cars to his Audi A1 this week.
What?
So whether that shows you the scale, I don't know, but it seemed a bit of a coincidence.
And no shame attached to it as well.
I shouldn't have thought so. No. I mean,
but that's one of the key things, isn't it? Not that people should be ashamed if they need something, but people kind of playing the system and like, you're the mug for not playing the system. But this thing, I think most of us simply can't work out. I don't know why someone with autism or ADHD would need to have a free car. And it's not just a free car. I mean, people have to put down a deposit, don't they? And you can, it's famous, you can put down 7 grand and get a top of the range Beamer or something. But you also get, your MOT, you get your tax, you get your insurance. It can be licensed for up to 2 other drivers, so your carers can drive you. I mean, they'll pay for repairs, you name it. I mean, these are huge costs for ordinary households.
It's a cushy deal, whichever way you slice it. And I think middle-class do-gooders are a bit naive about how much the welfare system in general gets taken advantage of. People have been coming out saying, oh, the amount of fraud is like 0%. So, well, firstly, the amount of fraud is never 0% in any walk of life. And secondly, we're not really talking about fraud as such, not what the government defines as fraud. We're talking about people who could actually be working or don't need a free car, getting a free car and getting benefits. That's what people see. And it's difficult with things like autism and ADHD because, again, you can always find really extreme cases of somebody who just like cannot go on public transport or something. But by allowing people to do that, you then allow vastly more people who can go in with there's various symptoms that, let's face it, are quite easy to fake or for kind of
well, they're unverifiable, aren't they? I feel anxious going on the bus.
Have good days,
oh, okay, then have a free car.
A good day today, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a problem, isn't it? People know how the
system works, and particularly since there are websites which are coaching people. We need to be a lot tougher on this, I'm afraid, and it will probably involve some of these hard cases getting caught up in it. Hopefully not. And you can be sure that the media will be focusing on the edge cases. Yeah. But got to do something about this, and it starts with not being so soft and gullible. Well,
and it is gullibility, and I think, frankly, a lot of it is quite patronising, sort of the middle class, sort of progressive things. But we've got 815,000 people now use the Motability scheme. There are more than 700,000 vehicles on the road. Customer numbers have surged 30% in 5 years. 30% in 5 years. I mean, have people noticed disability going up 30% in the last 5 years? No, I mean, most of this is, again, mental health. It used to be backache, then it was stress, now it's anxiety, depression and ADHD. But even the company themselves, they have found that there are people, non-disabled relatives, regularly using the vehicles. They're going to have stricter rules, but they booted more than 5,000 users off the scheme themselves, showing, because they couldn't, sort of sometimes tracking and realising these people are, it's late night runs and things. These people are clearly not disabled. But this is the thing. I mean, there will be people who need it. We want to make sure those people who get their scheme, but it's now been totally and utterly, I mean, it's something that people no longer trust. And that breakdown of trust between taxpayers and people who are vulnerable is a dangerous thing.
It's a dangerous thing because you get to a tipping point where people who are not ripping off the system start to feel like mugs. And you get otherwise law-abiding, reasonable people just start thinking, well, everybody else is doing it, I should too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Just want to finally ask you, a new survey of 2,000 hybrid workers who work some at home, some are not at home. A third of them say they take fewer sick days than when working full-time in the office, apparently. So they have fewer stress-related symptoms like stomach pain or headaches. I mean, what a surprise, because you can get away with work. You're not having to do the journey into work, and you can get away with it at home because no one will notice. I mean, what a surprise. So apparently it's better if everyone works from home all the time, as far as I can tell.
I tell you what I will say about this. I think it's quite an interesting finding. I'm not sure about all this stress stuff, but I was a bit ill for a few weeks ago, and I work from home most of the time. I'm obviously not in physical labour.
No one will have him.
If I'd had an office job doing what I do, I would have been out of the office for 3 or 4 days because I wasn't ill enough. Wasn't well.
So
enough
it did work in that scenario.
But being ill, I could actually do quite a bit of work because it's not often you're that ill that you can't do anything.
Yeah, but there's a trade-off, isn't it? But I never trust these self-reported surveys. I'm going to get Claire Purcell's thoughts on that in just a few moments. So Chris Snowdon, thank you very much for joining us. He's at the Institute of Economic Affairs.